Pauline Beck has joined.
It's 12 noon, Tuesday, June the 25th, 2024. We are calling the meeting of this special meeting of the City of Las Vegas Historic Preservation Commission to order. Will the clerk please call the roll and determine if we have a quorum, and please let me know the commissioners that are on the telephone.
Thank you. Chair Stodel?
Present.
Vice Chair Laramie? Excused. Commissioner Levine? Commissioner Beck?
Present.
Commissioner Hotchkiss?
Commissioner Hotchkiss here on the phone.
Commissioner Serfas? Commissioner Cosgrove?
Here.
Commissioner Palacios? Commissioner Moody?
Attending by phone.
Commissioner Perdue? Commissioner Roberts?
Here.
Commissioner Seabrandt? Here. Commissioner Gillespie? Here. Thank you. We do have 3 people on the phone, Commissioners Hotchkiss, Moody, and Beck.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Agenda item 2 for the record, has this meeting been properly posted in compliance with the Nevada State Open Meeting Law?
Excuse me, can you turn your mic on?
All right. For the record, has this meeting been properly posted in compliance with the Nevada State Open Meeting Law?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, this is public comment period. Comments made during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed, may be limited. Would anybody like to speak at this time? Seeing and hearing none, let's then move on to agenda item 4, Chair's announcement relative to the Historic Preservation Commission. The Chair has 2 announcements to make. First of all, I'd like to introduce our new representative from the City of Las Vegas Attorney's Office, Paul Maddow. And we lost our last city attorney representative. I don't know what happened to her. I think she went off to become elected to, I think her last day is in 72 hours. So Paul, welcome on board.
Thank you so much. Paul Mata from the City Attorney's Office. Rebecca Wolfson has been elected to the municipal court as a judge, so she's starting there in a couple of weeks.
And how long have you been with the City Attorney's Office?
I've been with the City Attorney's Office for 4 months now. I came from the Attorney General's office.
Ah, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. The other announcement of the chair has to do with a copy of the letter that was sent to the chair last week, as well as Dr. Seabrandt. A copy was provided to the city clerk's office this past hour. For the official public record. This is an announcement only. This is not an action item or for discussion, again, just information. The focus of the letter is in response to a request by the Clark County School District on work that has already started and is proposed at the campus of the Las Vegas Academy. The work and the plan includes elements of the Las Vegas High School Historic District, as well as buildings that are on the historic register. The letter from the school district requests that the Nevada State Historic Preservation Office, that it fulfill its responsibilities as required under Nevada State Law 383.121 which says the State Historic Preservation Office shall determine which buildings have historic significance and should be preserved. That's a direct quote. The school district letter says the proposed project includes the complete demolition of several contributing historic structures within the Las Vegas High School Historic District. According to the letter, the school district is specifically requesting the state's comments on a part of the plan which the school district, according to the letter, started this past November. The state's response letter says the school district plan calls for, quote, the complete demolition of 6 out of the 11 contributing resources in the historic district, and that, quote, it is in direct conflict with the intent of the state law. The SHPO office suggests that the school district consult with both the Clark County District Attorney's Office as well as the State Attorney General's Office regarding the proposed plan. I may add at this point that they also need to talk to the Las Vegas City Attorney's Office in connection with those buildings. In the letter, the state directly asked the school district if the school district is asking the state to comment on a proposed work plan by asking if the work has, quite frankly, already commenced on the historic site. The letter is signed Rebecca Lynn Palmer, Administrator and State Historic Preservation Officer. Since this letter was just sent out last week, there's been no reply from the school district. And again, this letter is being read into the record only as an agenda item for an announcement. It is not an item for discussion at this point. For the record, I met yesterday with the Clark County District Attorney Stephen Wolfman and gave him the packet information that was presented to this commission. And that letter is the one that has now been sent to each of the members. Agenda item number 5, for possible action, approve the final minutes by reference of the special meeting of May 29th, 2024. Look for any comments or corrections from the commission. If not, would look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Commissioner Cosgrove.
Microphone.
There we go. Motion to approve, Commissioner Cosgrove.
Great. Further discussion by the commission? General public? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Hotchkiss votes aye on the phone.
Commissioner Moody, aye, by phone.
Pauline Beck by phone.
Motion carries unanimously with the chair voting in favor. Thank you all. Let's move on to agenda item number 6. This is for discussion and possible action regarding the approval of the final report of the historic context and reconnaissance level survey of the East Las Vegas area, generally bounded by South Bruce Street, Wingard Avenue, North Mojave Street, and Interstate 15. Second item to be dealt with is the National Register of Historic Places nomination for the LULAC building, the multi-purpose senior center located at 330 North 13th Street. Dr. Seabrand, anything you'd like to add at this point?
Yes, please. Thank you, Seabrand, for the record. So initially, the consultants were going to be present for this report. However, they did receive comments from our chairman and SHPO on some changes. And again, keep in mind that we create these agendas well in advance of our meeting. So the comments came after this was already agendized. So they are going to be working on all of those edits, comments, and suggested changes. And we'll be coming back in. If we want to be in line with SHPO, and so if we can get the nomination back to SHPO for their potentially September board meeting, then we would hear the final report and nomination at our September 25th meeting. Is that right? Are we 25th? So I am here to take any comments that the board members have, or you can send them to me by email, and I will relay those to the consultant.
There's a couple, three different questions here. First, there's the possibility that with the very few changes that are in the nomination, that we could in fact approve the nomination with the changes. Secondly, after SHPO makes the changes, do we normally get it, does the board normally get a chance to see that again?
Yes, so the SHPO board meeting is on September 13th, and our meeting would be on September 25th. So it could be possible to get the final report to this commission. If not, then we would have to delay that a bit more, but keeping in mind that this is a National Park Service federal grant that does have a deadline by December of this year, December 31st. So it has to be done before then.
So we don't feedback what you said. By September the 13th, SHPO is due to have their comments done, or that's when they're meeting of the museum board to approve the changes?
So that would be the museum board. So we can get the changes to SHPO. I think we can get everything back by, I mean, they are given 30 days, so it depends on when the consultant can give us the final report back with the changes made, which I don't anticipate would be more than a month. And so if we can get it to SHPO in time, then they can give us their comments back before they put it on their board.
Okay, all right. So then it's whether or not it's at our September meeting or the October meeting, but that would be the process. So as far as the report itself today for this commission to take action, do we obey this or do we approve it with the corrections that we want to make, and then that would go to SHPO?
It would be approve it with the corrections this board wants to make, and then that would go to SHPO.
Correct. All right, further comments or questions? Please.
Commissioner Beck,
Yes.
I have one area right at the beginning of the report where I believe there's an issue. Chair Stoldal commented on a paragraph about ancestors of the Mojave and Paiute tribe. Page 17 of the report, page 31 of our packet. And it was written by the consultant had inhabited the Las Vegas Valley for 15,000 years, and so on. And the comment was made that we should be using the proper term ancestral Puebloan, or say something like Southern Nevada Paiutes celebrate the ancestral Puebloans as their ancestors. I don't think that's true. I don't think that the Paiutes celebrate ancestral Puebloans. Plus, I don't, this whole thing about the ancestral Puebloans is based on the Virgin River, and that's controversial. There's really no evidence. It's an interesting idea, but it's not accepted widely. And so I came up with a different approach. And I realized this is going to be rewritten. So, where is it? I'll read you what I wrote. I think that somewhere in there, we don't need to get into how many years the indigenous people have been there and so on. So I wrote, in Nevada, the old Spanish Trail crossed land belonging to the Southern Paiute since time immemorial.
This is Bob Stoddall responding. I think that is more than satisfactory. It covers the area. I was just trying to put some space in between the 15,000 years and the Southern Paiutes, but I think that what you're doing is reflecting what took place. I don't know if we have. Were we able to, Clerk? Were we able to type up exactly what she said and read it back?
It's on the record, it's recorded.
Okay.
So Sebring, for the record, sorry. Colleen, can you please send me that sentence? Because I'm having a very difficult time hearing you, and I need to send that information to the consultant today.
Okay, I'll do that. as soon as I'm through talking with you. The other thing I just wanted to mention as an aside is that there really aren't Nevada Paiute. There's Southern Paiute and Northern Paiute. And the Southern Paiute are comprised of the Chemehuevi, which some people refer to as the Mojave tribe, but it's really the Chemehuevi, which is Southern Paiute. Then you have Southern Paiute in Malapa, Las Vegas, Kaibab, Cedar City. And so it's an umbrella term. And so Southern Paiute is what we should be using.
I think that this area, even though it is just a couple of paragraphs, is essential to be accurate. And so are there any other, I think, does anybody not support what was just proposed? Are there any other changes, Commissioner Beck?
No, that was the one.
So with those changes to the document that was submitted earlier, which is on page 1 of that, the proposed was suggest rather than stating the fact that Southern Paiutes are direct descendants of the ancestral Puebloans or have been here for 15,000 years, we will accept what Commissioner Beck is changing on the packet that was submitted to the board, and Dr. Seabrand has submitted to the consultants. But I would look for a motion to approve. Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you. I had a couple questions, and I thought that the consultants would be here that could answer it, but if it seems like it might be best for me to send my questions for clarifications in email.
Okay.
And Dr. Seabrand, you would need those today, is that correct?
Today or tomorrow?
Okay, it was just a few, grammatical and spelling errors, and then there was a couple simple questions, just kind of curiosities that wouldn't necessarily weigh in too much on the nomination, with the exception of one where I wanted to get more clarification on. Later in the document, it identified, I think the terminology was Hispanic, vernacular. I think it was Hispanic vernacular. And it was identifying certain elements of residential buildings that were altered in order to, and they were identified as Hispanic vernacular or Latino vernacular. Those alterations, amongst others, were like utilizing the front yard for active living space. And so those changes to those existing original properties it alters the original property. So in a lot of other reviews for like neighborhood designations, those specific alterations were identified as reasoning to not nominate those properties because they were changed so much.
Like
So now-
carports,
What's that?
like the carports on the.
Exactly, or in this particular case, it's putting a wall or a fence at the front property line, maybe removing the landscaping and paving it with concrete or stone pavers, creating a front courtyard area. I guess my question to the consultants would be, where and how do you distinguish between, or how do you justify that as being a contributing resource to this, where it's a non-contributing resource and it actually precludes the adaptation in other instances?
The question, the only nomination they're making, though, is for the LULAC building. They're not nominating the district at this point, just the building. This is they're just reporting the site. If they were, in fact, like we did with the Huntridge, that went up for a district.
Right.
As well as there were some individual buildings that we could, I think there are 3 left. I think the only thing that they're suggesting, and the only nomination currently in this packet, is just for the one building, not for the entire district. If they have to do the district, they'd have to include just what you said, I think. But that's going to be a question that they can respond to.
Identifying that, though, I appreciate that. But identifying that, does that not add to the like contributing resource to help with the nomination. I'm just thinking kind of comprehensively for future as well, not so much specific to this, but if this is going to be used as a standard here, are we setting a precedence for future?
Well, I think what you're suggesting just provides some important context. And so if this were to be an actual nomination, then it would be an error because they would have to apply that, what you suggested. But to put it into this report and have a sentence or two about the context, I think would be very helpful. So I would just suggest sending all that information to Dr. Seabrand.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Then would look for a motion to approve the report itself. We'll have the vote on the second item, which is the actual nomination to the National Register. So look for a motion to approve with the appropriate corrections.
Sure. Commissioner Purdue motions to approve the report with the recommended corrections.
Further comments from the commission? Further comments from the general public? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Hotchkiss votes aye on the phone.
Beck votes aye.
Moody votes aye.
All right, chair votes in favor, and it passes unanimously. And I'm wondering whether the microphones are off up there to see if that'll help with the feedback. We're getting the two microphones seem to be on. Yeah. Great, thank you. And then let's move on to the second element, which is the actual nomination. There are limited proposed corrections on that. Discussion by the commission, if not, would look for a motion to accept the draft of the National Register of Historic Places registration form, which is for the LULAC building itself. And then just one or two minor date changes that need to be improved.
Commissioner Cosgrove, so moved.
Further discussion? General public? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, Beck.
Hotchkiss votes aye on the phone.
Moody votes aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with those in attendance, with the chair voting in favor. Thank you all, and Dr. Seabrand, thank you for that. We'll move that forward. Let's move on to the next agenda item, which is number 7, 24-03-08 HPC, report by Jay Dapper, principal of Dapper Companies, regarding the status of the Huntridge Theater. Huntridge Theater was purchased by the Dapper Companies on March the 31st of 2021. A portion of the sale required the new owners to sign a settlement agreement and a mutual release that transferred the responsibilities of reviewing and monitoring the rehabilitation of the Huntridge Theater to the City of Las Vegas, as well as to nominate the property of the City of Las Vegas to the City Historic Register, which was done almost immediately after the sale was completed. The theater was added to the local register on May the 26th, 2021. With the final approval of the City Council on September the 21st. As part of the review and monitoring the property, the legal document says that the HPC will receive quarterly reports from the Dapper Company. This report is part of that required. Dr. Seabrand?
Seabrand, for the record, I have nothing to add other than we will be having our update today.
Great. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Chair, how are you?
Well, I'm great, welcome. Didn't see you sneak up there, didn't see you walk up there.
So I'm here to give you guys a quarterly report, respond to some of the questions that you had the last time I was here, and then give you some updates, some positive updates, and some information on some of the progress we've made. So I'll start off with the presentation that you guys all have in front of you, and that's up on our screen today. Page 2 of that is just has a little bit of a kind of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And some of these things we've talked about before, and I won't spend a lot of time on them, and some of the things I'll spend a little bit more time on But number one is design, which is page 2.
We do not have the packet.
Oh, you don't? Okay, I'm sorry. It looks like it's up on the screen.
It is, but we don't have the,
I apologize. I didn't know I was operating this. So, okay, so number 2. So these are the things that are covered within our update, which I believe this was emailed to the board, right, Dr. Seabrandt?
No, that's the PowerPoint is the presentation that they're seeing now. But
Oh,
they
okay.
do have any backup that you would have sent.
Will this eventually make it to them, the presentation?
Yes, it'll be available on the website soon as the meeting's over.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so from a design perspective, so one of the questions and/or concerns that was brought up last time, there was a delineation between our core and shell plans and each of the TIs that will happen in the project. And core and shell has been worked out on the project, and Ginsler has been hard at work at doing the construction drawings for that core and shell plan. Initially, we had kind of intermingled both the core and shell and the TI, or the interior build-out for the Huntridge Theater. And we realized that going through that process, there was a lot of nuance and a lot of things that we had to spend a little bit more time on. And in order to try to move the project forward in a more expeditious manner, we decided to separate the set of plans for core and shell and Huntridge Theater TI. In addition to that, we were already separately working on the set of plans for the Park Central, which is the restaurant and bar that's going to be going in one of the ancillary buildings, and we just thought it was prudent to split up the theater plans in the same way. So that's been done, and we have an expectation that Ginsler will complete their set of core and shell plans within the next 3 weeks or so, 4 weeks. Could be less than that. We have a page turn that we have to do before we send those plans to the city of Las Vegas. And all of those core and shell plans match the approval that we submitted originally to this board, the HPC board, so everything matches that. And then in addition to that, we've since submitted our set of plans for the Part 2 application, which initially went to the state, and we received an approval for our Part 2 application. And then we just recently, which I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, received our approval from the Park Service, which we'll go over in a little bit more detail further in the presentation. So,
are so deep into this project and know exactly what you're talking about. If maybe sometimes you're going through this, turn it into a little more layman's terms. For example, the core and shell, does that mean strictly the historic theater?
well, yeah, so core and shell is not just the historic theater. It also pertains to the ancillary buildings, but it's just the, like, if you've ever walked into a project where the interior is not built out yet, but all the core and shell is done. So that means that, before I'm able to build out a theater inside the theater, I have to do all the improvements that, we had on our plan. So we have, we have a black box theater and a cabaret theater in the back.
Right.
We have to build the core and shell of that. We have to make some structural enhancements to the existing theater. We have to, paint and refurbish the exterior and facade and all of these things, in addition to all of the underground work and site work that has to happen. So basically, I'm going to say that, the heavy lifting part of
Okay.
the construction, the core and shell, that happens first. Once that's completed,
Right.
then we would move on to what they call the tenant improvement, or the TI, you hear it referred to, which is the interior build-out. And so what we're doing is we're splitting those two sets of plans. So the core and shell, which is the exterior of the theater, the 2 new theaters in the back, and all the renovations and refurbishment of the shell, we'll call it, will be in the first set of plans that's about to be turned in.
Okay,
This-
so if I understand correctly, because I in my filter, and I was using the Park Services filter as well, they confine themselves to the building that's on the National Register.
Correct.
And anything that's an addition, which doesn't fall under the tax credits, is considered an addition. And so the buildings that are on the west side are not part of the tax credit.
Correct.
The buildings, anything that you would add to the back, they describe as additions, the Black Box Theater and the Cabaret, those are also not covered under the tax credit.
And you're talking about under the historic tax credit.
Yes.
That's accurate, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's how I kind of see the project, the historic Huntridge Theater, and then the work that you are doing to the Empire property as kind of two clumps. The building itself, the theater, the structure, and then the inside as one piece of business. The two new theaters and the buildings on the west side as another part. Is there a way to
That's accurate, but the one thing to take into consideration, and that's where the nuance comes in, is every board and we'll say group that's evaluating the project is looking at it in a slightly different way. And so let's just start off with the last application, the Part 2, which is the National Historic Register portion of the approval that I just described.
Right.
So I would agree with you that the historic theater was the only thing that was on that application, because they're not evaluating the two new theaters, and they're certainly not evaluating the buildings on the side. So then if you take that and you set that aside, when we originally came into both the HPC and then turned in our entitlements to the city, our application it didn't bifurcate those things. It was one holistic application, which included the historic Huntridge Theater. It included each one of the new boxes. And even though the ancillary buildings that are on the side are not on the register, it also included those items as well. So we looked at all of those.
All right, that's part of the presentation, but how the commission approved, so to speak, was that our vote was that the buildings on the west, nor the black boxes which are in the back, interfered with. We didn't say that they were part of the, all we simply said is they did not, you weren't trying to pretend that these were part of the architecture was part of the Huntridge. You weren't making that, you were simply, and we voted and said, maybe change the signage a little bit, and there were a couple of other things, but it wasn't approving the project, but only in the sense of that they're not interfering with the register. That was the approval that we gave.
Well, yeah, if we would have isolated,
I'm sorry, isn't that correct, Dr. Seabrand?
Yeah, no, I think that the entire project was submitted in its entirety, and the reason that we were directed to do that was because all the buildings surrounding the portion of the theater that was historic, I think that the city still felt that that was within the purview. So like, for instance, when I went through my entitlement process, the entire portion of the project, all the architecture, I mean, we talked about, when you get to, like this portion, I don't know if you remember, but we talked about how a portion of this roof right now is much higher, and we kind of peeled it back and we made it lower so that you could see the architecture of, the Huntridge spire. We talked about those things, and that was part of our package that we submitted so that we could make sure that the HPC and then also the State SHPO Board was aware of all the other things that were going on around the theater.
Exactly.
So it wasn't like, okay, here's just the theater, look at just the theater. We actually included all of those things.
No, exactly, but the only authority that we have is to say that what you want to do is not interfering with the building. It's not approving the projects, it's just saying, this doesn't interfere with the historic structure. You're not pretending that the architecture is now really part of the Huntridge Theater, or that the buildings in back are going to be so tall that it's going to interfere. That's the only authority we have. We can't approve your project. We can just say it doesn't interfere. But Dr. Seabrand?
Saban, for the record, that is correct. So the certificate of appropriateness did approve the proposed work on the historic part of the theater, and as the Chairman Stodel says, that the new buildings would not interfere. But I would have to turn it over to either Mike or Seth to give more on the planning side of that.
For the record, Michael Howe, we're going back through, so from the approved entitlements, we have to iron out is that there's a condition on the entitlements for conformance to the certificate of appropriateness. And so right now I'm going back to get the entitlements of what's said, because there's a couple of things that they're interwoven.
Where I'm going with this is that what this commission has the authority to do is simply to say, oh, look at what you want to do with the project, and does this interfere with the historic property? It didn't interfere. We didn't approve that you're going to put a restaurant in there, you're going to approve a brewery in there. That was not within our purview. So it's not that we approved the project, we simply said, well, this looks good from the exterior. It's not going to interfere with the historic building. So I think it's just a matter of verbiage.
Sure, and I would, Mr. Chair, so I would agree with you. And when I say that we submitted this in a holistic manner, part of making sure that the HPC was comfortable with this was understanding what was built around the theater for, the line of sight, visibility, and those types of things. And so just understanding this one thing, and like I said, when we went through the Part 2 process, SHPO and then the Park Service looked at it, we understand they were ultra focused on just the historic theater. We know that. But we also, like in the same case with you and both the city on the entitlement side, we presented everything so that they had the opportunity to be able to look at all the buildings around it, and so that if there was any comments, questions, and or concerns, they'd have the ability to say, hey, wait a minute, you're altering the building that's next door, or this is going to block the line of sight, or whatever the concern may be. And so when we got that original approval with the HPC, that was our first step. Our second step was we submitted our entitlements to the city, which included the entire site. We went through that process with the certificate of appropriateness, and then the city approved the holistic, the entire project with all the ancillary buildings. Then the next step was, at that point, we were submitting for the Part 2, which we did. And very much like when we submitted to the HPC, we didn't just include information about the historic building. We included information about the entire project, which our consultant recommended that we do. That went through the process. It went both, to SHPO at the state level and then on to the Park Service. And they, did their evaluation and came back, and they ultimately approved everything, surprisingly with no conditions, which was great. Not expected, but it was very good. And so at this point in time, and Seth, you can correct me, if I'm wrong, now that we've received the certificate of appropriateness with from the HPC, our entitlements, and then now the last kind of step, which is the Part 2 approval from both state and the Park Service. From an approval standpoint, other than continuing to come and update the HPC, we believe that we are at the end of the road as far as our submittals to whether it's the city, the state, and or the federal government in regards to the overall design of the project. And that's how we think we're at today.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Seth Floyd for the record, and I think that's what Mr. Howell was alluding to when he mentioned that, you have an entitlement approval that has conditions, obviously, on that, and you have to abide by the certificate of appropriateness, and of course, this property is unique in that it's got the covenants through the settlement agreement that we took over those obligations to enforce. But yeah, as far as coming back for entitlement applications, unless you were changing something about the project or amending it in some way that required a new SDR, and Mike is looking up right now that SDR so we can go through what those conditions are and make sure we can update the board on that. But yes, my understanding is that your entitlements are in place and you're on to the next phase of that as well. Unless, of course, like I said, if you're changing something and that may require further review.
Yeah, and we haven't changed anything in the set of core and shell plans that we're about to turn into the city, match the entitlements and then also the submittals that we've both made, at the HPC level, the state level, and then also the federal level.
Yeah, I guess what I've seen over the last, since we voted on that, the HPC, and I probably have not seen the artist renderings in order, but they look slightly different. There have been different versions of that than, and I'm talking exterior, and again, artist rendering. So I couldn't tell you today which artist rendering of the exterior that we approved. Is this the one that we approved?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. So the reason that we put these two pictures next to each other is, so it's actually the same. The only difference is, at the time that we showed you the slide on the left that says exterior project rendering front view.
Yes.
So that was what you considered and approved.
Okay.
The exterior project rendering exterior on the right, as you can see, has color and it has more definition. And the reason that it has more color and definition is because at the time that we submitted this, we hadn't gotten our paint samples back yet, and there was some things that we were still trying to figure out. So we didn't want to come in and represent that the color of the spire was originally pink if it wasn't. We had to go through that process, and that's one of the things I'm going to speak to today, because the commissioner over there asked some questions about that and how we got to the point where we identified the color of the spire, and so we're going to explain that a little bit today. But so once we got to the point where we understood some of those things, then we took the existing renderings and simply updated them with the correct colors that we believe that the project is going to be, how it's going to be built. But if you look at the one on the left and the one on the right, you'll see that nothing has changed other than the fact that we've put in the correct colors.
Yeah, although the one on the left, we can't see the
Correct.
one on the thing on the right.
I wasn't able to fit both of them on the page, but we use this for illustration purposes. But if you went back to our original submittal and you look at the rendering view and you look at both buildings, they're identical.
So the one on the right and the one that came before the HPC, the only difference is the color changes.
Correct, yeah. So all the exterior elements that were approved before, today, in our construction drawings, match that. So you'll be able to, match every little element, because effectively, we can't change those things. So, for instance, there is
You can, but then you'd have to come back to us.
Correct, but we're not planning to do it. So there is, as a good example, there is a chimney stack that is over just to the left of the spire. We didn't know what that was at the time. We finally learned that there was a boiler that was locked inside one of the walls, which we've since discovered. As you can imagine, the building will no longer have a boiler, and even though it had a boiler previously, we'll still leave the chimney stack that was there because of the boiler. It just won't be in use or operation anymore.
Great. That's, and the last piece of business that I was looking for clarification was when the phrase "approve the project" is that what the city, and it's my understanding based on the Park Service, that there is no tax credit available for additions, and from the city, there is no funding available for additions. Anything that was connected to the main theater, there would be funding that would be available, but not for additions, either, I guess, on this side, the west side, or the ones in back. So you're cleared up. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to move forward through the presentation, going back. So paint analysis is next. And so this is just to give a little bit of a description about how we got to this paint analysis and how we ended up getting there. So we really spent a lot of time on this, and we went back through historic pictures, and then we also did a lot of investigation. We actually hired somebody to come in and do some investigation. And ultimately what happened, if you look at the next page of the presentation, it's okay. So basically what we did is we went through and we looked at several samples. We scraped off many layers of paint. And we ended up sending those samples in for evaluation, and what we found out was that there was many different layers of paint, and it depends on where you were taking paint samples from, that varied. And so what we ended up trying to do is find and discover an area that wasn't molested, I'll put it that way, that somebody hadn't painted over 1,000,000 times, or we knew that hadn't changed over the years. And so if you look at section 3, we found an area where, and I'm going to show you in the next page, where we found an area that we believed had not been, changed over the last, 80 years. And that area is what you see here. You can actually see this little area, and this is kind of, inside, underneath an eave. And you can see that there's a renovation, and we can actually see where the renovation went and the new roof was added. But we also found an area where we know that there was no renovation done, and it was the original plaster and all the original, basically like stuff from 1944 was all still there. And so in this area that we ended up uncovering, what we did is we took a paint sample from there, and we found that it went plaster and paint. There was nothing under the paint. So it was the very first thing that was ever painted. And when we found that, that's what led us to this color, which, I can't put it up on the screen, but this is essentially the color that it led us to. And so that color, after it was evaluated, and you can see where it is, so that's where the sample was taken from, and you can see it's actually right on the actual plaster portion of the original, theater spire. And so that's that. Now, this took a lot of time to get to. In fact, we had a lot of false, we thought that there was a few colors, like there was a green color, which I was really hoping that it wasn't this crazy green color. And we ultimately found this area that we know was kind of the original area. And then what we did is once we did that final evaluation, we learned that it was this color. Now, I was very surprised that it was this color. I didn't expect a pink. And at first I was even a little disappointed. But then now over time, not only have I grown to really like this pink color, but I feel like it's very appropriate for the building, and the fact that, I have a high level of confidence that it was the original paint color, it feels good to me. So when we learned this information and did all this research, that's when we started to plug in the new colors and information into the most recent renderings that you guys have seen in some of your last updates, because now we're educated and we can say, yes, we feel like this is the correct color for this portion of the building. So I hope that all that extra detail makes sense, and certainly if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer the questions.
I just have a comment, or I guess a question for staff. Mr. Dapper is under no requirement to paint it the original color, is that correct? I mean, he can paint the building to choosing.
I'll just speak to this. Regardless if we're required to or not, we think that it's the right thing to do, to, bring it back to the day that it was built. And so we've been on a quest to really kind of get down to the, like when this was built, we've got black and white photos, and in black and white photos, it's impossible to tell what colors things are. So we've been doing this historical investigation to be able to say this is, what we really believe that it is. And so it's helped us out quite a bit. And our intent is, if anything was painted a certain color when it was built, that's what we want to bring it back to.
We had the same situation at Channel 8 with the Howard Hughes home, which is still there, the one that he lived in 1953. We took the colors all the way back to the original color. Unfortunately, it's a terrible green, but we decided to go ahead and do that. So the bringing the color back is important, and so I think that's a great move on your part. So, Diane, is there anything are they required to have the original color? And then secondly, the only kind of little asterisk is, do we need to approve the color?
So, to-
exterior?
Seabrand, for the record, so the covenants do say that it has to go back to the original, but it does not specify, and it does not use the word color, it's just the original.
Okay.
So it can either be, we include the original color on that, but it does not say that in print.
And going back is great anyway, but when we approved this, I thought we had a great discussion about the color, that it was going to be a light color, or when we originally approved it. Unless we have to go back and approve this color, I think we can move on.
So we don't specifically have to approve color. I think during the certificate of appropriateness application discussion, it was that Mr. Dapper was going to do the paint analysis, and I believe everybody did agree that whatever the original color would be is what it would be painted.
But if he was going to paint it turquoise, the entire building, I think that would certainly come before us.
Well, yeah, so.
But anyway, we're getting way off, because this is, I think
Sure.
on your part, a good move, so thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And just to let you know, so the pink, if you can see the rendering on the right, so the rest of the building we found is the plaster, when you take it all the way down, the rest of the building is white. And we have another Sherwin-Williams color that we believe matches that as well. So basically, we have the portion of the project that you see that's pink, and then there's a couple of areas and some accent areas that we also have found that same pink, and we intend to paint those areas that color. But then the rest of the building, we believe, was all a Sherwin-Williams white color, and that's the color that we're going to go with. So. And then, again, we talked a little bit about color of the neon sign, and I'm going to get to this slide. So we went and rehuddled with Yesco on this and discussed this with them, and as I said before, so the color right now of the neon at the top of the sign is matching what we found up there, meaning we replicated what we found. Unfortunately, with neon signs, unless you have a piece of the original neon from 1944, it's impossible for us to be able to tell what the neon is. Now, the likelihood that it is what we're seeing today is very high, or very likely. So if you see on this slide, right here, so we were able to match the white color with the new glass being installed. So if you look at the current nighttime picture, so that's what it looks like today. And that glass that you're seeing on the neon, it actually matches what was there before. So Yesco basically took that, matched it, and replicated it. There's no way that we have there's no way to date the neon or know that the neon that was existing there that we matched was the same neon in 1944. It's not like paint. And there was no pieces of it or fragments that we could, see that were just kind of laying around that we went, oh, yep, this is correct. So because we only have photographs, from the 40s that are all in black and white, we can speculate as to that this is correct, but other than that, there is no way to be absolutely sure that the neon is the same as it was in 1944. That being said, because we matched the neon that was there, somebody would have had to take great effort to change out all the neon in the sign at some point to be able to change the color. We don't think that was very likely. In fact, the sign company said it's very unlikely, because normally when a sign is a certain color, to be able to change it is quite an extensive change. And so they felt pretty strongly, especially because the entire top of the sign was still wood, that the neon glass that they emulated was the same neon glass that was originally in the sign. So I hope that answers your questions.
I have a question. Mr. Dapper, on your own website, there are photos of the Huntridge Tower with the moniker glowing red. How do you explain that?
Well, when you say red, what do you mean?
Where we see the word Huntridge glowing white, on your website, you provide photos for everybody to see that show it in red.
Well, is it a photograph or is it a rendering?
It's a photograph.
Okay, so what year is it from?
Well, one of them is the Kodachrome slide from 1965, and another one is in a...
I don't think, so we went through all the photographs.
I'm
and
100% certain. I'll save you the time. I'm 100% certain. There are
Okay,
two
I'm going to
specific-
tell you that
Excuse me, sir.
we believe that.
Excuse me, sir.
Hold-
The question is going to be spoken
Yeah, so we believe that
when he
this-
stops speaking. Sure.
So, we spent a lot of time looking at the photographs with Yesco. We looked at all the evidence that was there, and we believe that this is the correct color. So if you think that that's not accurate or that's not correct, more than happy to look at any information that you want to provide us, but from the research we've done, we believe that this is correct.
You have photographs on your website that show it glowing red. Can you explain that?
Well, no, when you say can I explain that? I'm telling you, we looked at all the photographs and we looked at the neon that was in the sign when we replaced it. And this was the recommendation from Yesco. I'm not a sign person, and so I went based on the recommendation that the expert, which is Yesco, they're probably one of the most preeminent sign companies in the country, and I went based on their recommendation, which is in this report.
At the last meeting, you said that you would have them present here to answer any questions that we had.
They put this report together.
They put these photos together? Where's the report? So, an additional question here. Were any glass tubes?
And if you'd like, I'd be happy to give you Ed's contact information, and you could go speak with him directly.
I think that would have to be done on public record, and he should have been here per your offer.
I didn't make a commitment. I didn't make a commitment
We can cite
to
the
bring
minutes. Should
Yesco.
we cite the
I
minutes?
said that I would go to them and spend more time, and that's exactly what I did. And is there a problem? Is there an issue? Because I'm going to tell you, you seem very hostile, and I've been working.
As chair, let me jump in and take a little bit of control here. First of all, your question is, please state your question again so we're all for the record. What's your question?
Were any components of the neon sign replaced?
Not that we know of.
Okay. Further questions?
Yes. Please explain the color red that is shown in multiple photographs on your own website and in other places.
I cannot.
Okay.
So how would you respond to that? If I show you a picture, if I bring up your website right now.
Would you like the neon to be red?
It has nothing to do with what I would like. It has to do with
Would you like the neon to be red?
I'm not here to answer your
Excuse me,
question,
let me
sir.
jump in. We're not going to get into this. This is not productive. The question, your concern, Commissioner Roberts, if I understand, is making sure that the color is correct on the hundreds. That, I think, is your fundamental concern.
It's close. My fundamental concern is that any changes that are going to be made to this historic property must follow the rules in the agreement. And I believe that these changes should have fallen under our purview for approval before they were made.
All right, so the question is regarding this sign, should Mr. Dapper, should the Hundreds Theater have come to the HPC, to the city of Las Vegas, to update the certificate of appropriateness regarding the color?
And I have a question for staff, so.
Well, let me ask my question
Sure.
first. And regarding the sign, since I'm seeing if I can put a chronology in. Has the HPC, and the color, of course, is important, has the HPC ever approved the color in the past, and is this changing that color, or has the HPC not approved any color, and this is an update that needs to be approved?
Statement for the record. So the commission has, as I said previously, the discussion during the certificate of appropriateness was to have the color of the paint analyzed. We did not discuss the color of the neon. The agreement does state that it does need to go back to the original, but as Mr. Dapper said, all we have from the 40s are the black and white photos. So he was reliant upon YESCO to make the determination of what the color was. And he could have, yes, updated the certificate of appropriateness, but because we don't specifically require color to be approved, it was not required.
So the question from Commissioner Roberts really is a fundamental question. Is this changing what it was to a color that he has done research to and maybe closer to the actual color it was in 1944 than the red one that is on the website? Should that have, does that fall into a category of, under the legal document, that we, the HPC, should have approved? Any significant color change, is that part of the legal document, or is this not covered in the legal document?
Mr. Chair, when you say the legal, are you referring to the covenants that the city has taken responsibility of? Is that what you mean by the legal document?
Well, in essence, the answer is yes with an asterisk, because there are 3 elements in the settlement agreement that are called legal documents. There are the covenants, there are the actual wording that's in the legal documents that requires Mr. Dapper to come here on a quarterly basis. There are requirements in that give the HPC oversight over the interior of the building, which normally we don't. And then there's whatever is legally required, because a part of the legal requirement was putting the hunterage on the city register. So we have that responsibility. We have the responsibility of the existing covenants and the responsibilities that are added into the legal documents itself.
All right, Mr. Chairman, let me take a shot at addressing all of those. And for some reason, I just wanted to call you Your Honor, because I feel like I'm in court here. But so, yeah, you referenced there are a few obligations that have already been met, and they fell into the category, I might use the wrong word here, but essentially it's the pre-renovation obligations.
Okay.
And then there are some post-renovation obligations that Mr. Dapper has to follow. And then there are the covenants. The covenants are not, from my read of them, are not specific enough to require a specific review of the color of the sign. And as Diane said, she already talked about the certificate of appropriateness. What it says is that no visual or structural alterations to either the interior or exterior will be made without the prior written permission of the state. That's now us, because we've stepped into the shoes of the state by virtue of the settlement agreement. There was a certificate of appropriateness that addressed the exterior. Property owner agrees that the state shall have the right to inspect the property, and obviously we do that. We have done that in the past, and Mr. Dapper's also given reports. The other covenants have more to do with preserving the property being open to the public, but I'm not seeing anything that would require him to come back for a specific approval of the color. With that being said, though, I think that what the commission asked of him and what was reasonable was to do the research and do the best he could to match that original color, because even though there's not a specific requirement to come back, it is pretty clear that the goal was to preserve the historic character of the building. I think that's obviously why you're here and why you have that review on a number of buildings. I mean, he has done some analysis. Obviously, you're free to question him on that analysis. But I think he met that obligation to do the research and align it as closely as he could with the original intent. But there is no specific requirement to come back.
Yeah, the analysis is not the question at all. The question is, does visual alterations include what the color is? And it clearly says visual and structural, and so the interpretation of visual, how is that just meaning the physical structure, or does it mean the broadest sense that a layman like myself would say, visually, is there going to be any changes? So I think that there are, having spent an inordinate amount of time through unlegal eyes and reviewed the settlement agreement and what it expands the responsibility of the HPC, the covenants which went along with the sales agreement that were there before, the second set of covenants which have to do with the court's decision that Mr. Dapper is faced with fines that he accepted, but every year that he does what he is supposed to do, those fines get reduced. Wasn't something that Mr. Dapper did, it was the previous owner that was fined, but those fines became part of the building. And so you've got the district court elements of the legal agreement, you've got the settlements legal agreement, you've got the existing covenants legal agreement, and then you have the additional responsibilities of the HPC that have to do with it being on the city register. There is not one nice, clean document that takes all of those elements and puts it in one thing that members of the HPC could understand what their responsibility is. It's kind of scattered all over in legal terms, and I think it would be important for our new city representative to review those 4 fundamental different documents that are all linked together in the settlement agreement and let us know. My reading is that paint on that level doesn't include the interior of the building. Yes, it does. That it's a specific responsibility that Mr. Dapper is legally supposed to be here. Yes, it does. But I think it would help Mr. Dapper and all of us if the city attorney could provide a 1-sheet, a 2-sheet, whatever it takes to take all that stuff that's scattered all over and put it in, so we would know what we are supposed to do legally and what we can't do legally, or not can't do, but what's out of our sphere of responsibility.
I just want to clarify one thing. I think it's really important because I'm now on my website and I'm looking at the photographs, and so you need to be really specific in what you're talking about. So our current rendering, which is now matching what we believe is correct and true based on all the research we've done. So I'm going to go to this rendering here. So the one that's on the right, where you see the pink and the white, and when you say red, so there's 2 different things that are in a neon sign. There's the channel letters, and then there's the neon inside the channel letters, which are 2 totally different things. And so when you look at the rendering, it matches the photo that we believe is the oldest photo that we have in color, which is the one on our website. I don't know if we can put this up on the screen because it's only on my phone, but we have a photo that's on the website that, and this is part of the research, I'll move that, and it's not great, but maybe if the person that's working this can just go to the website and go to photos. But if you were on this website, we have a color photo, and based on a movie opening that happened, which is why they had that guy in the little, it was a Disney pirate movie, and based on when that was released and why they did that promotion, which we found information on that, we believe that this is the oldest color photo that we have. And as you can see, the sign is white and pink, and the neon at the top, the actual channel letters are red, which represents exactly what, if you go back to our renderings, if you could click back to that, the channel letters are red, and then the neon inside that is clear, which reads exactly how it reads in today's world. So basically, the channel letters, yes, they are red, and the actual neon itself is clear, which reads the way that it reads today. So if you go back, could you flip back to the renderings? Which matches this. So as you can see, when you say red, so no, the neon is not red. We don't believe that the neon.
Thank you for all that. How do we know, what do we have this to base on besides your words right here? What factual, physical evidence do we have to back this up?
Back what up?
His claims.
Because I had Yesco do the research, and this is what they told me.
So you also said that Yesco.
And the photograph that you're, and the
Commissioner
photograph.
Roberts, let's get to the fundamental question. If we do not have authority over the color.
We do, and I can cite scripture for you. What is our guiding document for this?
Well, so what are you suggesting staff look at? What document?
I'm asking, what's the guiding document? These are the ongoing questions that I've had.
So there's 4.
Okay.
So instead of arguing this point, listen, we feel like we've done the research. We feel like what we're representing in the rendering on the right is matching both colors based on the color samples we did, and then also the research and recommendation that YESCO made to us. We believe that we are, bringing it back to its original. I don't think it's productive at all to stand here and debate this.
Well, let me take charge of
Sure.
this matter, and that is, Commissioner Roberts' basic question is whether or not this board has the responsibility to determine if a significant change has occurred in the historic structure. And in this case, he's questioning the color of the paint, which is a significant, if you said all of a sudden, I'm going to paint it banana yellow, that's one thing. But then the more important thing is whether or not this commission actually has oversight. You may be able to paint it any color you want.
Sure.
And so.
Well, Mr. Chair, the one thing I just want to say.
I'm going to end this conversation right now.
Okay.
And that is, I'm going to ask staff to determine whether or not this commission has authority over the color of the exterior of the historic structure. And then secondly, whether or not Mr. Dapper needs to come back and make this presentation, because I will say the efforts that you went through are, from my standpoint, are significant, and I think that would be part of the presentation. But if we don't have the authority, then we need to move on.
Sure.
And so I think we will put, Mr. Roberts' question is a good question, and we'll ask staff to determine whether or not under any of the legal documents that dictate how we operate and what our responsibilities are, have them look at that and say to this commission, yes, you have the responsibility, and then send a letter to Mr. Dapper saying, Mr. Dapper, we'd like you to come back at your earliest convenience and let's talk about the color. And then you make the presentation that you just did, and then we would have a vote.
Sure. And I just want to add this one thing. So like I said with the paint, so we believe that, well, first of all, I made a commitment that we would bring it back to its original 1944 glory, right? We believe what you're looking at on the right is correct, and is that, which is a channel letter that's painted red with, when I say clear neon reads, a different color. Not a different color, the color that it currently is. And so what I'll tell you is the photograph, or, he said he thinks it should be red. And what I'm telling you is right now, what we're representing is those red channel letters are correct. The neon inside the red channel letters are what they are today in real life. When you go out there at nighttime and you see it lit up, that's what we believe the neon on the inside is. If staff determines that there is an approval that the HPC has on the color of the channel letters and the neon, not only would I be happy to come back and, present what I just presented to you to have you consider it, but nothing would change from a perspective of, we believe that this is correct, 1944, and this is exactly what I would be presenting.
Mr. Roberts' question is an important and a strong one. And so we just need clarification on that as well. And just as a minor FYI, neon itself is a color. The neon gas is a particular color. It changes when you add different gases in that. So everything is generically called neon, but in fact it is a different gases that produce the different colors. And that's my entire knowledge of that area. So if you could go on to the second part of your presentation, we look forward to hearing it. Or was that it?
I think that's it. I mean, I don't, I was going to just give you just a cursory update on Bar Central, which is the tenant that's going next to the theater, which I could just quickly run through. Again,
sure, please.
This is the space that's going to be at the back that was previously the post office. And these are some renderings of what that space is going to look like. And our timeline has changed just slightly. We're working currently on financing for the project. We're working on permits, as you can see, and we're hoping that we have permits on the core and shell by Q3, Q4 of 2024, and we hope construction starts just after the first of the year.
I appreciate, and any of those updates on that is helpful, but again, is out of our purview as far as what goes, that's a building permits, unless, of course, the exterior has changed on that. Dr. Seabrand, is there anything else you want to add at this point?
No, thank you, Chair.
All right, commissioners, anything? Mr. Dapper, thank you for all of your help and your understanding as we move forward.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a good day.
So I didn't lose track. We're on agenda 9.
Number 8.
Ah, I did lose track. Yes. Agenda item number 8, this is 24-0282-HPC1, discussion for possible action regarding approval of a grant in the amount of $4,113,000. What's that? Actually, it's probably a little bit less than that. It's closer to $4,000, because that would have been a lot of signs.
Yeah, one at every house.
$4,113.12 to the Huntridge Neighborhood Association to design and produce street light signs identifying the Huntridge neighborhood, generally bounded by East Charleston Boulevard and South 15th Street. Although if you were looking for $4 million, we could see if we could come up with that. Dr. Seabrand?
Thank you, Seabrand, for the record. So this is a request to design and produce and install signs in the Huntridge neighborhood. Understanding it is not on the historic register, but it is of historic age. And Ms. Kelly Wallace, some of you may remember, we just added her house on Francis to our historic register. So we do have one house within that neighborhood on the register, and I will let them take away on their presentation.
Please.
Thank you. I'm Kelly, the president of the Huntridge Neighborhood Association, and this is...
I'm Mark Brandvik, the artist that helped design the sign and with Kelly's help.
Yeah, so we just wanted to come up with signs like a couple of the other neighborhoods have, and like Beverly Green and McNeil, and I know Jonas Park is working on one right now, so we wanted to make one too. And we put together a little PowerPoint of where the design came from and the significance of it. And Mark will be discussing his design.
With assistance from Kelly. Okay, so this first sign, well, this slide, some of the elements appear to be a little bit faded from this side, but this was the proposed initial design. There are a number of elements that we've incorporated. We'll get to some of these elements on the second, the last few slides, but we wanted to incorporate the Huntridge Theater, which we just were chatting about, and the color that we decided was largely based on some of those old slides and even some of the research that the gentleman previous to this presentation just gave. We wanted to incorporate World War II roots. You can't see it, but there is aircraft from that era that's a little bit faded, and at least from what I'm looking at. We wanted to address FHA Title VI housing and the various models that were built at that time. And last but not least, the Circle Park, which we'll go through section, point by point here, but we wanted to just do a clean design that evoked the history and maybe perhaps inspired additional research based on some of the elements in the sign. So that was kind of our prompt going forward.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the colors are so faded on, I don't know if it's on everyone's, but.
We can, yeah, there's some additional renderings in the final couple of slides that change the opacity of a couple of elements, so they might they might be a little bit more salient on your screen, but for our purposes, I think I'm going to hand this part over to Kelly because she knows more of this historic stuff than I do. So,
Well, I mean, we've all been talking about the theater for the last hour. Everyone's pretty familiar with it. Yeah, so, sorry. The theater, everyone is familiar with it, and it was opened in 1944, and it was designed by famed theater architect of the time, S. Charles Lee, and it's on the National Historic Register. And so obviously that would be part of our sign because it's such an emblematic part of Huntridge as a whole. So that kind of makes up the one element of Huntridge, and you'll see as we go through that we broke down all the elements of the sign. So here in the middle, we have the theater, and again, it's a little faded. It's more pink in our rendering on the bottom, but for whatever reason, it's not on here. And here was the original drawing. It was taken from the UCLA archives, who has this drawing. And it was interesting because we just noticed on this drawing within the past couple weeks that there is an airplane in there as well. And we didn't know that when we were designing ours. And obviously the one in the drawing is not a warplane, but it's kind of cool that we...
well, it does sort of evoke possibly World War II aircraft as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, nonetheless, of the era. So this particular slide addresses the need for housing for World War II defense workers, or actually the actual plane element ties it into defense work. The B-17 in particular, I believe we do have slides that talk about the significance of the B-17 Flying Fortress. That's the silhouette that you see there. It's likely that a lot of the folks that lived at the Huntridge Theater worked at either,
neighborhood.
what was it? It was Nellis Air Force Base. What was it at the time?
Sorry.
They were pitching to the basic magnesium folks that was being built out in what would become Henderson, as well as Las Vegas
Right.
Army Gunnery School.
Right.
So that, again, it's just another tie-in to, you know,
That's
we
why
wanted our
Huntridge
sign
was
to
built, yeah.
evoke a little bit of that history. This is an image of that same plane flying over the gunnery school, now known as Nellis Air Force Base. And we were able to uncover a couple of articles profiling workers that worked and tested those planes at that time that also likely lived in the Huntridge neighborhood. And this, so yeah, this was that magnesium, the magnesium plant, the basic plant out in Henderson. A lot of that metal was used in aircraft and the like for the war effort.
And so we found an article talking about how they built houses and marketed them, like you said, to the basic employees as well as the gunnery school. And just an old picture of magnesium from the plant and how it was used for, you know, war aircraft and artillery during World War II. And then the picture on the right is the original owners of my house, and he worked at Basic Magnesium. And so now we're moving on to the next element of the sign, which is the housing. And the housing was built using the FHA Title VI program, which was put in place by Franklin Roosevelt because they really needed war worker housing during World War II. And here in Las Vegas, we were designated as a critical defense area to the country and had a big shortage of housing. And that was what spurred the development of the Huntridge neighborhood as well as Mayfair and Biltmore at the same time. The houses were built in what was called the minimal traditional style. So just kind of simple, but easy to build and cost effective and quick to put up. And so there were 3 different models of this home that were built in Huntridge. And so if you see on the bottom, we have the bottom of our sign, and at the top we have pictures of the houses from the historical report from Raider and Rule, identifying the three models of the homes. So it's Model A, Model B, and Model C. We took those houses and, what would you call it?
We just simplified it into a more printable, cohesive, cleaner graphic. And
Yeah.
as we did with all the elements in the sign.
So we basically, artists made the picture into art. And so it's the exact same houses, the Model A, the Model B, and the Model C on our sign.
Which also fittingly, produced 3, which is a really nice number for those of you that are interested in design. It's a nice little 3s, 5s, 7s, odd numbers kind of work well in terms of reading and balance.
And so now we're moving on to the last element of our sign. This is just a general picture of the Huntridge neighborhood as it, like right around when it was built with Circle Park, future Circle Park in the middle.
And so this is where we propose to place a sign with signs within this boundary, including the empty section of the bottom right in this photograph within that rectangle that I think is still commonly referred to as the Huntridge neighborhood.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't part of the original Huntridge subdivision, it's still generally considered the Huntridge neighborhood. So we were hoping to put some gateway signs there in addition to the areas that are part of this historic photograph.
And it is included in the Huntridge Neighborhood Association right now, that little area, so.
Good.
Okay, where are we at next? And then the final element just includes images of the plant life that exist in and around the park. And so the top are photographs of the park hosting various activities and just generally serving as a backdrop for the community. So we wanted to, keeping the spirit of that, just do a subtle hint of the park. Anyone that lives in that neighborhood will often see that canopy of the park beyond the roof lines of these little bungalows, and it just sort of makes it sort of a unique neighborhood in Vegas anyway. Oh, let's go back. At one point, it appears there was a proposal for a Veterans Memorial. Again, just tying in the war effort history with the park and the neighborhood. Do you have anything to add on this particular one?
No.
That's great. All right. Great.
And then these final slides show, I was just mocking up various opacities for the aircraft, from something much more salient to something that felt like it was dissolving into the more the past, the history. My personal preference is for maybe slide number 2 or number 3, based on what you're seeing here. But I just offered these to maybe potentially get feedback from the panel to see if there was one that seemed to resonate.
We kind of like the idea of it being kind of almost like a ghost, a memory of the past, the plane. So that's why it's not like fully, colored in.
But still very important to us in the development of this project to have that. As it turns out, that specific image is not only historically accurate, but also appropriate for just where it's placed in the design itself. A tank, for instance, floating in the air would not be, not only would not be historically appropriate, it just wouldn't work with the sign. So it really just kind of sort of serendipitously works on a number of levels. So
And evokes the World War II.
And we were hoping too, if folks would drive by here or walk by, it might elicit questions, responses, or maybe they would wonder what this neighborhood is. Like, if you're just reflecting exactly what someone's looking at anyway, it's not really a teachable moment. But here you have an opportunity to perhaps reflect on something someone may not have known about their neighborhood, and maybe tie them into a legacy that goes back, nearly 80 years. So that was part of the desire to include those elements. So I think And then this last one, I think, the more faded one was included, but again, for me, I probably prefer where you can see it a little bit more.
Yeah, this
but
is too faded, but if you go.
it didn't show up on our original PowerPoint
Yeah,
quite that.
Probably like the first or the second one are the ones where we were
Lean
kind of
towards,
We were
thinking.
thinking about,
Yeah.
but,
Great, all right, questions from the commission, please.
Yes, Commissioner Perdue, I'm wondering if, after we've had the discussion a few minutes ago on the colors of the Huntridge, if you would want to consider the lavender vertical lines being pink? That's
They
question
actually
one.
are. I don't know why it's showing up like this. They are pink.
Okay.
Yeah.
And question two is, why is the western boundary of the Huntridge neighborhood Maryland Parkway instead of 10th?
okay, should we go back to that slide?
Yeah, it should be 10th. Yeah, it's 10th.
Maryland Parkway, in fact, is right down the middle of that image.
Yeah. Circle
Then
Park.
that should be corrected. And,
Is that not correct?
No, that is correct. I was just, the arrow is pointing to Circle Park, and then you see the white square that's drawn in there, that's the boundaries. Circle Park is on Maryland Parkway.
okay.
Commissioner Roberts, thank you both for your presentation. I think it looks really good. I do have concerns about the opacity, as you're saying, Mr. Brandvik. I like the plane personally. It's not based on my opinion, but I think that I think that if it's going to be there, it should be noticeable. And I think there's probably a difference here between designing a sign that someone's going to drive by at 65 miles an hour on the residential streets versus something that's going to be hung in a gallery that's lit. Mm-hmm. So the amount of time to notice the details is minuscule compared to for this. But I think the design is great. You guys did obviously a ton of research, and I wholeheartedly support this, not only as the Ward 3 commissioner and a resident of the Huntridge neighborhood, or technically Ridgeview Tract 5, which is the rectangle that was omitted there in the aerial photo. But yes, I absolutely I love the design, and I think you guys did a wonderful job.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Couple of things. One is the streets according to the sales brochure in 1942, the streets were designed narrowly to prevent high-speed traffic. I mean, that was one of their sales pitches, that we made these streets real narrow to slow the traffic down. Couple of questions. One is, how did you come up with 1941? Because the homes didn't get started to build until December of 1941 and didn't go on sale until February of 42.
Well, if they started in 41, we just kind of went with that, you know?
Okay. I mean,
Happy to change that.
No, I just, whether there was something else that you had uncovered, because the only thing I could find was that they announced it December 20th, 1941, and said, we've just started this week in building, and they'll be ready in February. But there's nothing wrong with 41, it's just only a week, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we're just thinking the sort of the idea was 41.
Well, World War I, sure, December, yeah, okay.
That was,
More important, the question that I had is, you used the phrase that the homeowners association will maintain these signs, but these signs are actually going to be installed on city property, city poles by the city of Las Vegas. When you're saying you're going to maintain them, you can't replace them. The city has to do that.
True, but so we're applying for a grant right now at the same time, right? Dr.
Yes.
Grant? Yeah. And so I wrote in the grant that we were purchasing extra signs to be kept at the house of whoever's the president of the Huntridge Neighborhood Association. So I put in for like 7 extra signs. So if one needs to be replaced, then the city, yes, would have to come and do it, I suppose, if we're not allowed to do it.
Right, you want to make sure there's an understanding of what the city association maintains on it. It sounds like you're going to have somebody looking at the 32 signs on a regular basis, and if
Yeah.
one gets vandalized or falls apart or whatever, then there's somebody that you would contact at the city?
Right, so Seabrant, for the record, correct, our Public Works Department would install these signs on the city property, and then if there was a damaged sign, then whoever the president of the neighborhood association would contact our office and say, you know, we need the sign replaced, and then our Public Works would pick it up from them and then reinstall it.
So I just think it would be important for you to get an actual good telephone number to the person at the city, so the signs would be...
Okay.
And do you have any sense when, in buying these signs, what they're saying the lifespan is of a sign? Is it good for 2 or 3 years, or 10 years, or?
I haven't asked that question, but they're from the same company that did Beverly Green signs. So I guess Michelle Laramie's not here today, but we could figure that out.
Yeah, similar signs seem like they've been holding up for, you know, at least a few years. The Beverly Green sign, I can think of Paradise Palms has a...
I mean, I was thinking whether or not you're going to come back in 3 years and say we need some additional signs, which I wouldn't oppose, but I mean, just want a sense if we...
I would assume they would hold up fairly well.
Okay.
Yeah.
great. And are the sites selected where you're going to put these?
Public Works is selecting the places.
So Seabrant, for the record, so our Public Works does not need to make that decision because there's only so many signs that they can put on public property. So they were waiting until the applicant, if they did receive the grant, then be working with them to place the signs.
Oh, that's great. So work with you to where the gateways and so forth.
Yeah.
Now, this is my vote. I like number 2. I think that there's not going to be, although I understand what Commissioner Roberts was saying, but I don't think a lot of 65-mile-an-hour signs, but a lot of historic marker signs are placed in places where you just can't because it's, the traffic is. But in our neighborhoods, and I'd lean towards number 2, but I think rather than taking a vote on that, I think, would you mind if we approve the grant and let them select?
Absolutely. I think Commissioner Roberts, for the record. That's totally fine with me. I did have one other question, though, regarding the placement of the signs. Are any of these signs going to be placed in Circle Park, being that Circle Park is part of the original design of the neighborhood?
That's up to Public Works. We don't have a say in where the signs go.
But if you would suggest to them, would you
Sure.
think that'd be an appropriate place?
Sure, yeah, sure.
Seabrant, for the record, I'll talk to Public Works about it, but they have to put them at major thoroughfares usually, and we will ask them if they can put one there, but again, the ultimate decision is up to them.
I think they could put one because Circle Park is that Franklin. And
Yeah, it's definitely
Franklin, yeah.
a trafficked area, and it's right in the middle of the neighborhood,
right,
so.
but there's a pole right in the middle of the street, right in front of Circle Park. Maybe they could do it there. I don't know.
It'd be a great place if it's appropriate, and I think that's, so, if there are no further questions, we'll look for a motion to approve.
I'm happy to make that motion to approve.
Okay. Further questions of the commission? General public?
Aye.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Hotchkiss votes aye on the phone.
Beck, aye.
Moody also votes aye.
Motion carries unanimously with the chair voting in favor, and thank you for all the work you're putting into this great and important neighborhood.
Thank you.
This will really, I think, make a significant difference, and we will move forward. So look forward to an update as to when they're installed.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Now we'll move to agenda item number 9, 24-0310, HPC 1, discussion for possible action regarding approval of a certificate of appropriateness application for the replacement of 11 windows, removing 4 windows, 2 window additions, roof replacement, new exterior stucco, and a carport addition on the property located at 1255 South 8th Street. Dr. Seabrand?
Thank you, Seabrant, for the record. So this came in as a code complaint to our office. as far as work being done on this property that is located within one of our historic districts in John S. Park. The applicant did not realize he was in a historic district, and he unfortunately seems to have fell between the slots of when we send out our letters of who whenever that property is sold, and we send those letters out to the property owner. Soon as he was made aware that he is in a historic district and he needs to do the certificate of appropriateness application, all work did stop. And right now, at the time, we did not have plans that were submitted. The applicant did provide a narrative of what the plans are for the proposed work. And again, some of this work has been done already, but it did stop when he was made aware that it needed to stop. And we would deny it because we didn't have the plans, but staff would be inclined to approve some of these changes, including changing the roof and the addition of the carport, the addition of the, was it the?
Stucco.
Right, okay, sorry, the carport removal of the iron gate, the water heater addition, and also potentially changing to stucco, but we'll leave that up for a discussion for the HPC, as well as the changes of the window sizes. If everybody did look at the backup, all the images are in the backup that's on the certificate of appropriateness, but there is short slides that do show some of that work in progress that the applicant will show the commission.
Dr. Seabrandt, in looking at this, 11 windows, removing 4, a roof replacement, exterior, and adding a carport addition. When the building permits for this were approved, did the building department not notify you?
So there were no building permits that were submitted for this work. If building permits had been submitted, then I would have been advised, and it would have put a hold on any issuance of the permits so that the applicant could do the certificate of appropriateness application. But since that was not the case, some of the work did move forward.
Are these things that the roof replacement, the carport addition, that normally would require building permit?
Yes, they would.
Okay. Please. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed your comfy chair and air conditioning for the last hour and a half. I acknowledge I'm 100% at fault today, and as to why I'm here. Like Dr. Seabrandt mentioned, this property did exchange hands twice very quickly. I purchased it from a wholesaler. If you're not familiar with wholesaling, it's where people will get a house into contract and then they'll hurry up and shop out the contract to investors or somebody else who would like the property, and they add their little fee onto it. So I was not given any disclosures or any advisement of, hey, that this house fell under this historic committee. Now, I guess the genesis of this was, yes, we began construction on just altering the window sizes, and that's what snowballed this whole thing. And we also did tear off the foam roof in preparation to put on new asphalt shingles. And so, like Dr. Seabrandt mentioned, all work has stopped, and I'm here with my hat in hand and ready to move forward on how to get this resolved and provide a nice, pretty little property for somebody and add to home values, and everybody can look at it together. And
Could you use that just to go forward, just to show them?
absolutely. So I guess I'll go back one. So yeah, you obviously see, this is when I purchased it. These are just a few pictures of some window replacements. They've just been replaced with standard window sizes that you find at your local Home Depot or Lowe's. What you're looking at is the front of the house right here. To the left is the front door. To the right is where the proposed carport, I would like to put that. You see some of the other windows have changed, and that corner window has been boarded up there.
Was there a carport and it was filled in as a garage?
So there was no carport at all, but there is a garage back there that has been converted into a living space.
Okay.
I just figured a carport would be nice for somebody. It's super hot outside. I don't know what other information I could answer. Any questions? If you need dimension sizes or whatever, I'm at your disposal here.
Question from the commission? Commissioner Roberts?
Yes, I have a few questions.
Sure.
So, actually, it's more concerns.
Sure.
I understand if, based on your story, that you were unaware. I'll take that at face value, but I think that you would be, or you should be aware that any and all construction work needs to have a permit, and there's several very good reasons for that.
Sure.
At minimum, I would hope that the individuals that you have hired to do this work are licensed, bonded, and insured. Without going into all the rigmarole here, I'm going to identify a few, 2 or 3 very obvious issues here. One, the windows that you're using to replace the original windows are not same for same, which is required. They need to be the same material and sizing. So you have a very significant conflict there. You're using vinyl windows to replace steel casement windows. So you're using vinyl sliders to replace steel casements, and then you're also changing the size, the location of some of them. The corner window that you have there. Well, first off, before I go there, do you have any of the original windows still?
No, they were all ripped out. Like you said, it was steel.
They were destroyed? They were thrown away?
They were thrown away and destroyed. Single pane glass.
Sure. Do you know what year this house was built?
1955.
Okay. The house that I live in was built in 1951, and I have the exact same windows that you had.
Okay.
I recently went through a process myself of reglazing all those windows, and it was very successful. It was a little bit tedious, not nearly as expensive as you would think, but it was a successful result. That corner window that we're looking at right there, that is a structural corner that you removed from your house. So I do not see a bond beam above there. And so I think that I think that you need to engage a structural engineer to confirm the integrity of that house for life safety purposes. That's a very big issue there that absolutely needs to be addressed. And I'm speaking from experience here.
Sure. I believe there still is a beam there that's just buried in the wood. I can obviously discover that.
Well, beams are horizontal and columns are vertical.
Sorry, I said the wrong word. I believe there's a vertical column there still.
Okay. The window itself, because I have a few of those exact windows on my house.
Right.
It's a 3-inch post. It's a steel post, and it bears above.
The column you're saying in the corner?
Yes.
Okay, yes, yeah.
So there couldn't be any, if you were planning to build something back in there, that would need to be engineered.
Right.
And then it would need to be 2 separate windows or whatever your design is there, but that's.
Yeah, no, I see exactly what you're saying, and like I said, I believe that support is still there, just the window, the glass, and the frames were removed. I have contracted with an engineer that will go through the entire property and is drawing up plans with all sorts of structure and this and that, and they're talking about where they need to add support inside the house to support the roof, to support everything, because when we go to do the roof, I now know, obviously, that you need a permit for the roof, and most likely it will need reinforcement on top of the sheathing in the form of plywood, which will add more weight to the structure. So all these things will be addressed, with the engineering report that I have started.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Sure.
I guess the final general issue that I'll weigh in on here, and it's not directly to you, sir, but if you bought this house from a wholesaler, I think this is a great opportunity to identify and spotlight on the ongoing issues that we have with house flippers, especially in our historic neighborhoods, historic aged neighborhoods, whether they're designated or not. Not only does this have an obvious, it has an obvious adverse effect on the architectural integrity of our neighborhoods, but it has an adverse effect on the buyers when they buy, unbeknownst to the regulations of the area, and it's really too bad. I think it's really too bad. But I'll leave it at that. I could go on, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, Dr. Seabrand, I'm wondering if a motion could be made to approve, it could be to, you indicated that there were elements that you felt he could move forward on if some changes were made.
Correct. Staff does believe that there are some elements that can move forward, such as replacing the rock roof with the asphalt. But again, the thing I did not mention, if you didn't know, people didn't read the backup, this is a non-contributing house.
Right.
So adding the asphalt roof does match what's next door to it, because I've gone out and visited this property. Also, the addition of the carport, again, does match the other houses in the neighborhood and next to it. The water heater would not be visible from the public right-of-way, so that isn't an issue. It is just the main concern, and removing the fence, the main concern really is the resizing of the windows.
Is that something that you can resolve?
I would say anything is resolvable
Well, but
in
I
the grand
mean,
scheme of
within-
things.
This is not a draconian board that, we
Sure.
live in this community
Sure,
as well,
sure.
so I mean,
Right.
but that's an important piece of business.
Right.
What I'd suggest, if that's a change that you would accept, as well as following the other elements that Dr. Seabrand said, as well as getting the proper building permits, I would be comfortable in approving this with those changes that are made. Knowing Phil well, if you have the opportunity to buy another home in this area,
Yeah, things would be very, very different,
we would
absolutely.
like to see you ahead of time and help rather than hinder. So
Right.
is that a motion that somebody would be comfortable in making? That we would approve this project with the changes that Dr. Seabrand mentioned, as well as getting the proper building permits.
Commissioner Purdue, so move.
Commissioner Roberts, without knowing what the final result will be, being materials and sizing of the windows specifically, I won't be approving this.
Okay. The approval is being designated to the city's historic preservation officer, checking those things off. So that's part of the motion. Further discussion?
I guess I have a question.
Please.
I believe I saw other vinyl windows in the same street neighborhood. Would those not be appropriate windows to move forward with? I know we totally broke the original ones, and that's terrible, obviously, I'm hearing that now. But I guess the next material is a wood frame window. I don't know if I'm sure somewhere someone would build a brand-new steel window, and I don't know how that even works, to be honest, but I'm just kind of wondering how
the response is that
Sure.
That window needs to be
Because I'm just wondering, I guess my confusion is what I replace it with.
corrected to the approval of the city's historic preservation officer. So if there are some options that are available.
Sure.
Now, the HPC is sending that over to the historic preservation officer. That won't come back here for a vote.
Okay.
There are several ways you could go, make those presentations to the preservation officer.
Okay.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Beck, aye.
Hotchkiss opposed.
Moody opposed.
And Commissioner Roberts opposed.
The chair votes in favor. Waiting for the votes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Passes by a vote of 4 to 3. So it's been turned over to the city's historic preservation officer. Please contact Dr. Seabrand and begin the process to work that out. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
your
seeing me.
candidness. Thank you. Next item, agenda item number 9 and 10, which is discussion of possible action regarding approval as second draft on the updated historic West Side School designation to the National Register of Historic Places. Dr. Seabrand?
Thank you, Seabrant, for the record. So again, the consultant's not here for this one because this one was delayed because, well, not delayed, it was extended because the last comments were quite robust for changes and edits. So they've been working on those. They have submitted the second draft, which has also been sent to SHPO. And whatever this commission wants to give feedback on. I know that I already did get some notes from Chairman Stoddall. I'll contact the consultant with other recommendations, and then they will be here for their final report if all goes well, depending on what SHPO's feedback is. Then we should be able to get them back here for the final report at our September meeting.
2 points. One point is that Dr. Seabrand and our city attorney are working on the process to see if there's a way that this board can get these multi-hundred-page documents more than a week in advance of them coming up for a vote, even the initial stages, because it delays it by an additional meeting, and so having 2 reports that are 300 or 400 pages long and less than a week, mostly we get a week, it doesn't provide the commission with adequate time to fulfill its legal requirements to review these documents. So we're looking at a process to see if because now these things get delayed in additional meetings when we make these changes. That said, it's our responsibility to read these documents and approve them. Some of these are just fantastically important historic documents that cover a great part of our community, and I think this board is leaving a wonderful path of history, as well as updating and improving all of these reports. I mean, this is very serious. So the motion we would look for today would be to approve the draft with the recommended changes, unless there are some recommended changes to the recommended changes that were submitted to, and I think that there's only five pages, and they're quite frankly minimal. I think, in my personal opinion as chair, that the author of this report has really done a great job in upgrading the previous document, responding to all the commission's questions and concerns. There are just a few dates that need to be corrected and a couple of other things. And then this would go to Dr. Seabrand, which would go to the draft writer, and all of that would then go to SHPO, and then it would come back to us.
That is correct.
Okay, so we will have one more view of this. Commissioner Roberts?
Yes, thank you. I just had a question actually for you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if this was a different, or I guess it's for city staff, but this is a different draft than what we reviewed a few months ago. Is that correct?
Correct. So the draft that was reviewed a couple months ago was draft number 1, and the commission gave the consultant comments and feedback. The consultant corrected the first draft to include those comments and feedback, and this is what the second draft is the result of that.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Chair, I wanted to ask, did you review the draft to address, because you had some numerous corrections that you submitted. Did you review to confirm that those were implemented? The reason I'm asking is because very early on in the first few pages, the term west side that was in question as to should it be spaced, should it be capitalized, should it be, I noticed that it was one word, capital W, used on and on in the early pages, early sheets of this draft, and I believe that was one of your hallmark call-outs from the original draft.
The concern is that the community that is identified today as the West Side, singular, one word, uppercase W, has been used as a geographical location. It's on the west side. Both of those are appropriate. Sometimes the documents and sometimes the newspapers of the day and today put a space into it, and they'll make it lowercase west side. And they're not referring to the geographical area, they're referring to it as a name. Today, the name is, and I don't know if it's ever been officially adopted by the city of Las Vegas, but in most of the maps and today, that area is called the historic west side, uppercase W. Initially, it started in 1923 when a group of businessmen in Las Vegas, thinking that they were going to make lots of money because they're going to build a dam in 1924, bought the land next to McWilliams Town site and said, look folks, this is on the west side. Look at the view from the west side, lowercase. The name didn't catch on. It was just part of the advertisement. Then here's some breaking news, which is going to be coming out in an article. In January, February of 1927, those same businessmen, along with the city's only bank, which bought additional property from Helen Stewart, got together with the then postmaster, who was the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and said, we need a post office in that area. Well, we can't call it Old Town. We can't call it Rag Town. Well, why don't we call it West Side? 2 words. So there's an application in Washington, D.C. for a post office there with the title West Side, uppercase, space, uppercase, side. And from that day on, that area was referred to as West Side. So she addressed this the best that she could, but since the newspapers and documents just interchanged, it was hard for her to singularly parse out. But it was originally called uppercase West Side, 2 words. Today it's called West Side, 1 word, and in between it's been called a whole bunch of things. We're looking for a motion to approve this document with the appropriate changes.
So moved, Commissioner Cosgrove.
We have a motion for the discussion of the commission. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hotchkiss votes aye on the phone.
Beck votes
Moody.
aye.
Okay. Chair votes in favor. Motion carries unanimously with all those in attendance. Agenda item number 11, report by the Community Development Department regarding directors' updates. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have about 45 minutes or an hour of updates, so hope that's okay. I'm just kidding. I actually don't have any updates. I'm going to defer to Diane's project update list as my updates. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's move to agenda item 12, report by the Community Development Department regarding project update and a list. Dr. Seabrand?
So thank you, Seabrand, for the record. Everything is still in progress. I did bring my charts here to have a bit more dates that are set that when we will hear these reports. So for the Cliff May Home Survey, we'll be here for our July 24th meeting, and that will be the first draft for that survey. We just discussed Rafael Rivera. The Old Mormon Fort, this is an update again on a National Register nomination, and that will be at our August 28th meeting, and that will be the first draft for that one. And then we just heard about the historic West Side School and design guidelines. We still are working with Ward 3, as we know they've been busy with the elections, and so we'll be working with them on scheduling that next meeting to discuss the design guidelines for the historic districts within John S. Park and Beverly Green. And then we do still have our future agenda items. Everything is still pending, or I'm waiting for callbacks or waiting for answers. We did have the update for the Huntridge Theater. And Chairman Stodel, I did want to tell you that the Floyd Lamb Park proposal will be actually also at our July meeting. And I have nothing else, unless there are questions.
Questions? All right, then let's move on to agenda item 13. That's a report by the Community Development Department regarding historic and archaeological resources in the local media. Again, if you see something, please send that to Dr. Seabrand or Teresa. Agenda item 14, discussion regarding topics for future agenda items. Comments made during this portion of the agenda by individual members shall refer solely to proposals for future agenda items. Any discussion shall be limited as to whether or not such proposed items are within the purview of the commission and or whether such proposed items shall be placed on a future agenda. No discussion regarding the substance of any such proposed topic shall occur and no action shall be taken. Any agenda items, please? Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you. I sent an email just before the meeting today to Dr. Seabrand and Seth and to you, Mr. Chair, regarding some properties that I wanted to see reviewed and hopefully entertained the potential to having them added to the historic registry. I thought that in my absent-mindedness, I forgot to add a couple other properties that I thought should be added to that list, and I'm happy to add it to the email. But I saw that the City of Las Vegas is also in discussions for affordable housing for artists within the Arts District. That specific area of Las Vegas, it's being expanded a little bit for the footprint, and some of the potential sites that were, it seems that I just breezed over the proposal, but it seems that some of the sites that were reviewed and then maybe rejected should be looked at for potential listing. One of them in particular is the Todd Motor Court Motel on Las Vegas Boulevard. And I think tying that along into the ongoing effort, or whatever effort there is with the motor courts on Fremont Street is really important. Dating them, the properties themselves, and identifying the significance of those properties and how rare they are to have, especially in a location such as Las Vegas Boulevard, and then of course Fremont Street. I think it's it'd be a really good exercise for the City of Las Vegas to spend some time and identifying what can be done with those properties. It's very clear that nothing is being actively done by the owner, and they're kind of left to just to the elements and to whatever other vagrancy or whatever types of vandalism that occur there. So I think it's an opportunity for the City of Las Vegas to take a hold of something that could really be beneficial, whether it's for affordable housing or just for general heritage tourism and a ongoing benefit to the overall look of the downtown area. So I think there's a lot of properties in that area that should be reviewed before they're demolished, and whether they're already on the registry or not. And one property that I'd like to identify too that is too far gone now was the original Ted Weens Firestone at Oakey and Las Vegas Boulevard. That property was in great condition, and it's now been almost completely demolished. I think it's going to be a food court or something like that, but there was a great opportunity that was missed there, and I'd like to get ahead of these additional opportunities that are still on the table for us.
So if you could add those things and send those to Dr. Seabrand, and then she can in turn forward that to the full commission. Two other points. A feasibility study by ArtSpace was just completed 2 weeks ago and is posted on I believe the city's website, regarding ArtSpace is a business that creates space for artists to live and do their work, and that's being considered for that area. It's a very detailed report. I think it's about 30 pages long. And secondly, the city has been discussing expanding the art district, and it does encompass several historic homes that you, so it would be helpful, maybe we could just get an update from the city as to where that expansion of the art district, because it does cover some historic buildings. That would be great for us to get a hold of. Any other? The last update is, I would like for 14 would be, we received an update on the Las Vegas Academy, the Las Vegas High School back in August of 2022. And I would like to have the school district provide the commission with an update on what's going on at the historic site. This is a request is based on the fact that the school district at their last presentation indicated they would be providing this commission with regular updates on what's going on with the historic sites at that building. Number two is the city of Las Vegas, the council on April the 2nd, 2003, it voted to put the Las Vegas High School Administration Building, the gymnasium, and what the city council said was, quote, associated site at 315 South 7th Street. And it's my understanding that something is going on in this project that has to do with the historic gymnasium, and this would require the school district to request a certificate of appropriateness. And third, the letter that this commission received from the SHPO office, that the plan that the school district has clearly, is in their words, is in direct violation of the intent of the Nevada revised statute. So it would be great if, at the earliest convenience, we could have somebody from the school district provide this commission with a presentation. Any other comments? Otherwise, we will move on. To agenda item 15, public comment. I do not see anybody in the audience, so it does not look like there will be any public comment. And with that,
We'll adjourn.
we are
Adjourned.
adjourned. Thank you all. And thank you for those on the phone.